Hello, dear beloved community. I am so delighted to be here. I haven't had a chance to look in the group. I've just been on an online call with my third level priestesses, but I think this might be the first Communion Wednesday communion, and it gives me a great opportunity to not only do the communion with you and the group, but also to talk it through just a little bit more, because it is a change that is very important to me. It's a change that, in my belief, brings us back into our own power and allows us to see that the need for readings or to be read by someone else is non-essential, and that the more that we put down that old paradigm, that old belief that someone out there, someone's tarot card, someone's assessment of the phases of the moon, someone's reading of a crystal or an oracle card is going to get me closer to God than I could get myself. So having said that, what is then, Ricky, going to happen on formerly Weekly Reading Wednesday, now Communion Wednesday? What are we actually doing here? What are we talking about? And I guess what I am excited about is that it's a little bit unknown. I want you to bring it to me. I want you to show me what's possible when you open to communion with the infinite mind, the God mind, that quantum field where all information is available. What is it that you would want to share in that way? So not by thinking that I have to draw a card and that card's going to tell me what the theme of the day is or any of that kind of thing, but actually in that absolute state of grace where we let the infinite speak through us. And I'm so excited about that because I see how many of you are already in that beautiful, glorious state, but are still potentially leaning in or overly reliant on the trinkets and superstitions of the New Age. Now, I want to speak with love here. I don't want to be dismissive of anybody's belief, but I am inviting you to potentially look at where you have put something between you and your own infinite nature, and whether or not it's necessary or just habit. Just because you learnt it in a particular way, what's to stop you evolving now? What else is possible beyond the trinkets and superstitions of the New Age? What would it mean to put down habitual behavior that's just been done again and again and again and not necessarily reviewed in a really long time? Vishen Lakhiani has a term for these inherited beliefs that we just pick up, and in the spiritual community we got a shit ton. It's called rules or bullshit rules, where we think that things have to be a certain way because they've been done that way again and again and again and again. But what about spiritual innovation? Yes, we come from ancient lineages and we can honor those lineages, but what would it take for us to recognize that we live in an extraordinary time far beyond anything that has pre-existed? We exist beyond the calendars, beyond the ancients' endpoint of reality. We literally open the book of life and it is blank. We are the scribes. We are determining what happens now. And this spiritual innovation is something I encourage all of my priestesses to do, which is to look beyond the bullshit rules of spirituality that say that if I don't put my crystals under the full moon, or if I don't put that in my thing, and I don't do this and I don't do my thing here, that somehow I am, going to be vexed or, cursed, or there's something that might actually just be a man-made rule. Maybe God didn't come up with the rule that if you don't put your crystals out at midnight that they're going to be bad crystals. Maybe none of that actually exists at the level of the quantum. And maybe if we investigate our man-made rules around spirituality, as much as we're willing to investigate our man-made rules around, culture and politics and religion, we're very happy to look at the bullshit rules of religion. We're very happy to look at the bullshit rules of a broken political system, a broken economic system. We're very happy to question. That's what spiritual seekers are really good at. But I see so often in spirituality, when I say, hey, could we question why you think that you need to only set intentions on the new moon? I'm not even sure if that's what you do. Is it new moon intentions? I think so. Why can't I set an intention like today? Because I want to set an intention today. Why am I living inside of borrowed limits? Why am I not consciously creating the reality that I want to live in? Why am I not encoding my experience of God and the infinite rather than accepting someone else's version? We no longer accept that priests are the conduit of the divine. We no longer think that we have to go and sit before a man to experience, divine revelation. There's so many things that we've put down, and yet we very often in spirituality will be, like thought police for one another, and we'll basically, hold each other in a prison of our own human making, rather than saying what else is possible. What exists beyond the limits of the known? What happens when I innovate and I perhaps go back to a truth that is ancient, or more ancient than any actual man-made belief, which is that I am infinite, unlimited consciousness. I am God. And if I am willing to accept that truth, I might have to give up some other little human truths, but other than getting a bit uncomfortable for a while, how can that not be the best possible thing for me? And I encourage everybody who hangs out with me to investigate their belief, because belief is the problem. And it doesn't matter if you think that you've upgraded your belief to a higher order of belief because now you're spiritual. You are still potentially replicating that kind of policing of what does a spiritual person look like for others around you, and that you're judging other people if they are not following the rules of spirituality. And I think most of those rules are bullshit. I'm going to say it. I absolutely think that we are more free, more powerful, and more glorious than anything in external 3D reality can reflect. There is not a single thing in the dream of 3D reality that is as powerful as the glory of the infinite. And that's where I go. And that's what Communion Wednesday is. So I'm going to start this off, but I would love to invite you to jump on board with Communion Wednesday, knowing that you cannot get it wrong. As long as you're not saying that if you don't pick a card by 3 o'clock on Tuesday, you will not get the blessings of heaven raining down upon you. To put down the trinkets and superstitions, what I would love on Communion Wednesday is that we don't use cards. We don't ask people to pick a picture or a number or a crystal or a flower. We actually just commune with the infinite. We tune into the infinite, and we say, okay, what is here? What information can I be the conduit of on behalf of this community today? How does that sound as an alternative to you have to pick this number and then I'm going to read you and I'm going to tell you what's happening and then I'm going to tell you blah, 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 because you don't have that. But actually this very subtle shift, and it is subtle, and I do get that what I'm asking of you is for a shift in perception that may not seem immediately obvious, but I feel like the consequences of the shift in perception are going to change our lives. Katie Cruz loves it. That is good enough for me. We are going to do it. Okay. So I'm going to begin, and I'm going to just explain to you what I'm doing, because if this is new to you, I know that you're entirely capable of doing it, because your birthright is to be the conduit for God's consciousness through you, or infinite consciousness in any moment. Like, you don't need anybody's permission to do that. But I do know that there are certain conditions that make that access easier and make you more confident and give you more sense of spiritual self-esteem. And those sorts of things include devotional practices, practicing your devotional practices, and then practicing them some more. And really then it's effortless. There's never a question to be asked. You never have to sit down with your Om and your oracle cards and your tune and give me the answer to my question. None of that has to happen. You just go congruent between head and heart. Okay, this feels like a good choice today. Or this doesn't. Or you go to do the thing and you're like, oh, that's not right. I really want to share a story. I haven't got permission to share it, but I'm going to ask Bree Jones if I can share it one day. It's about pot noodles. It's hilarious, but I love the story so much. But the point of that story, which I won't share because I don't have permission, is that you will know in every moment when you are in that state of grace where you're letting God speak through you what right action is for you. And that's the future of intuition. And occasionally you're going to meet a big gnarly fear and you're going to need someone to scaffold you and support you to move that fear. But that's a rarity. That's not every day. You don't need to turn up to someone every day for them to tell you what your intuition is trying to scream to you, but your fear is not letting you hear. You just have to be willing to show up to the practices that let your intuition speak through you. What I'm going to do with this group for the official communion that will happen each week, we know that we have a beautiful batch of third level priestesses ready to step into that leadership, is they're going to take an aspect of the method that they're training in with me, which is part of their qualification as an intuitive guide. And they're going to tune in through the archetypes. So archetypes are a way that patterns of meaning repeat themselves, and they go beyond the personal. And the reason why archetypes are so important to us as spiritual seekers is they help us move beyond our own little pity party, our own little belief that we're the only ones who could be experiencing something, and we move out beyond the limits of our own personal experience, and we start thinking universally as we see these patterns repeat themselves through everybody's lives inevitably. And then we can actually get a map to understand where we're at and what's going on with our lives. And it's like, you know, having the soundtrack to your life. You suddenly go, oh, I'm meant to be doing this right now because the music is telling me that. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to think archetypally and to look at your life archetypally by tuning into today the shadow archetypes. This is one set of archetypes that we will be tuning into as part of the official communion each week. Another set of archetypes that we'll be tuning into, which you may not have thought of as an archetype, is the chakra system. So this is something that might interest you. You might want to try it, but it's not required for Communion Wednesday. You might work differently. But the chakras are archetypal patterns that repeat themselves in every human being, and that the things that we see in each of those chakras when they're out of balance tend to be archetypal. So everybody has the same kinds of patterns of experience in each of those chakras. The third kind will be the divine feminine or the divine masculine archetypes. And this is a set of 13 archetypes which will elevate our consciousness and allow us to see what else is possible for our lives. So they're the three kinds of archetypal patterns that my priestesses might be tuning into. They may be interesting for you to also think about and tune into. But today, what has been grabbing my attention for quite some time is the shadow archetypes. So I'm going to have a little tune into that. I don't know if it's one shadow archetype or all four. The four shadow archetypes, to just give you a brief summary, and it doesn't matter if you know about this or not, the message will make sense regardless, is the prostitute, she who trades her faith for personal and physical security in 3D reality. So she's faithless, basically. The victim, pretty obvious one. The child, who usually abdicates responsibility in one way or another, whether that burden of being an adult is too much, or whether they just want to be, you know, babied because it makes life much easier, or whether it's just, you know, naivety. And then we have the saboteur. And the saboteur will often show up for spiritual seekers because it's sneaky and clever, and it's a less obvious face of the shadow. So that would include things like perfectionism, procrastination, the mean girl, that inner critic who just tells you you're rubbish and you can't do anything. All right, so I'm going to tune in. I need some lip balm, and then I'm going to do it. All right. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to tune into the energy of the group. Specifically, there's some people here with me now, which is beautiful. Thank you for being here. But there will be people who will watch this back later, and at the quantum level, there is no time and space, so it's not necessary for everyone, you know, to be here live with me to experience the benefit. And all I'm going to do is open myself to that infinite, unlimited consciousness that is in the field or in the mind of God, with the intention to tune in through the shadow archetypes. They're going to show me how that happens, whether it's one or two or all four. And we're going to see what information is available for anybody who happens to have intersected with me in this time, space, location. Okay, cool, right? We're not trying to do anything for anyone. We're not trying to read them or heal them or fix them. We're just opening ourselves with intentionality to be a conduit. And the way that we make sure that this is high and light vibration and not adding to fear is to make the choice to hold a high and light vibration. That is what service is to me. Service is always going to take people from fear to love. And if I put fear into you, then I've done my job wrong. Okay. There are certain conditions that allow you to open to that communion with God, with the infinite. Stillness, silence, withdrawing your attention from the superficial world. So if you feel like it, close your eyes with me now. Take a deep breath in and let it go. And allow yourself to drop out of your cranial brain and into that energy of your heart. And here we commune most powerfully and efficaciously with the infinite one mind of God. Okay. So the energy that is around at the moment for me, when I closed my eyes, I immediately saw the heart chakra. And I'm just going to break this down for you so that you, if you're thinking about doing a Communion Wednesday, you can see that it's actually quite an easy thing to do if you don't try to make it perfect. You just attune to the frequency of the message that wants to come through you. The heart chakra of the individual and the planet consciousness, so humanity as a whole, is in a state of grief that is actually very, very potent and powerful and purposeful. We're coming alive, if you like. We're being brought into a living state. For a time, our hearts have been dormant, closed off, iced over as a strategy for survival in an impossible reality. You are being poked awake, dear ones. You are being given fresh, oxygenated blood to that heart center, and that is both a literal idea and a metaphor for being brought back to life so that you are not subdued in your grief response to the world, that you are actually feeling a connection to the suffering of others, because that sense of connection is what will motivate you to stand up and serve, and not to simply try to hold your own little piece of the puzzle, as you've heard me say so many times, in a state of togetherness. Let chaos ensue. Let chaos come. Let yourself be torn asunder by these feelings, because you are coming back to life, and that is your freedom, and that is the beginning of you being able to truly stand up and serve. Who is speaking here in this name? It is the prostitute archetype. No one likes to meet the prostitute, and yet here we are. The prostitute archetype has allowed you to trade your faith for, in exchange, physical security on the material plane. For a time, collectively, humanity has believed that as long as their little quarter-acre block with the fence around it and their whatever they own and whoever they gave birth to inside of that fence is safe, then the rest of the world doesn't matter. But there is only one of us here. And your heart now is being woken from its slumber, where the dream of separation has allowed you to believe that you do not have to take personal responsibility for the suffering of humanity, and yet that is the fallacy that we want to break down now. It is not enough for you simply to use your spiritual seeking, brothers and sisters, to elevate your own little piece of the world, because there is only one consciousness here. What am I asking you to do? What is being asked by the prostitute archetype today is to put your faith in God, to trust your path of service, and to know that all that you need will be provided when you step faithfully out into the world. The very best and most potent action that you can take is to look today in your own life where you've been hiding in the shadows. Where have you been accepting less than your worth, for example? In relationships, whether they're intimate relationships or workplace relationships or with friends, where you have said, I'll accept that shitty friendship, that shitty marriage, that shitty relationship, because at least then I am safe in physical reality. At least I have friends. At least I have someone paying my power bill. At least I have a place to live. At least I have, no loneliness. This is what the prostitute does. She trades her faith for those things. It's better to be in a bad relationship with someone who treats me terribly than to have to go out and see what it feels like to be alone. And so we're constantly negotiating with God. We're saying, oh no, I'll be faithful, but I need to have this much money in the bank before I can be your servant, God. So we are constantly drawing lines in the sand and negotiating. And we're saying to God, I am faithless. And the action that you need to take is not to sell everything and move to Africa and, set up a missionary there, but to meet your own fear. The fear that you are not protected and guided by God. When you put your faith in something, anything less than God, when you believe that your security will come from a certain amount of money in the bank or a certain amount of friends or a certain amount of likes on social media, then you are inevitably spelling out your own demise. And I don't mean literally your physical life, but that life will have to be brought to an end at some point, because you are being faithless. And for the person who is a spiritual seeker, faithlessness will not fly. Faith is active, says Caroline Mace. You have to be congruent with what you believe and your actions in the world. So look to the shadows of your own life, dear brothers and sisters. Where are you hiding your faith in the fear that even if someone knew you had faith, for example, you might have one less friend? So be it. And so it is, and it is so. Let God lead your life. If you say you are a spiritual seeker, even if you don't use the word God, let infinite consciousness lead your life. Be faithful in your actions. Do not stay where you should not stay. Do not participate in conversations you should not participate in. Do not remain silent on things you should be speaking about because of your fear of not being well liked. And I ask you this day to stand up and turn on the light in your own life and look where you have been negotiating with terrorists and say, no more. I will be faithful today. That is my commitment. Even if it means I'm going to get uncomfortable, even if it means I have to end relationships, even if it means I have to hand in my resignation, I will no longer sit in the shadows pretending that no one will notice. Your incongruence is your invitation to consciousness to behave in a like way. So be fearless in the pursuit of setting your faith on fire, brothers and sisters. There's no need for you to behave like the prostitute. And so that is her invitation and her instruction today. And it's my privilege to serve you. Thank you for joining for the first ever Communion Wednesday. I would love to see more posts today and every week. Let God speak through you. Let's light this group up with your own divine wisdom, and let's just own our power to serve. Mwah. Have a beautiful day.